morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford is back with us. Good morning, Margie.
Good morning, Jim.
Well, it's great to have you back in the studio.
Well, I tell you, it's great to be back. Great to be back. That's what's the saying? There's no place like home.
No place like the home studio.
Like home.
Well, we have a beautiful Wednesday morning out there. Just checked my phone, and temperature's 73, sunny. It's going to be a beautiful day today. Great day to get outside. All right, but we hope you'll stay near a radio for the next hour here in Bradford and Brooks. And we have a couple of special studio guests with us today. Mr. Frank Thompson.
That's me.
Not the Thompson with the food mart. This is Frank Thompson, the former CB.
That's right.
And a veteran who very active for veteran causes, and with American Legion Post 121.
No, I'm with 157 now.
Okay, 157.
I move around to help.
Okay. All right, and also Doug Alexander, Pastor Doug Alexander. And you guys are with us today to talk about, well, it's a topic that really doesn't get brought up a lot, PTSD, which is an acronym for post-traumatic stress disorder. And Frank, you approached me about this, and is this really a big issue in Nelson County, do you think?
The county judge seems to think so. Mm-hmm. So Doug and I had this program some years ago before COVID hit, and it wound up basically COVID shut us down. Well, as the county judge was running for office, he approached me at one of his campaign stops at the senior center, and he discussed it and says, I want you to put me a program together for PTSD. Well, I put him a program together, and this is the start of the program.
Okay.
So we meet on the second and fourth Thursday at the courthouse in the side entrance at 7 o'clock. For people that may need help, this is a situation where no names are taken, and it's just you're there anonymously if you want to be.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now my perception is that a lot of people suffer from PTSD and may not even realize that's what's going on. Is that right?
That's correct. There's a lot of people, as I'm going to tell you, there's veterans who have it, and there's also civilians that have it from car wrecks or other major traumas in their life that really don't know that they've got it. Let's take an example. We've got a man out here that is taken to drinking. Mm-hmm. Or taken to drugs. Well, if you go back to most of the time, you're going to find an incident that triggered that, and that's what we call self-medication.
Right.
And that's where we're trying to get in through that, so that people have a chance to go someplace and to get some guidance on it. If they need some further assistance or whatever, we can furnish that.
All right. So this isn't necessarily, you're not doing counseling, but you're kind of a resource center.
Right, a resource center where we can sit there and get you to the right counselors and stuff. It's one of those things, and a lot of times it's just talking to other veterans or other people that know that you've got it.
Right.
Fortunately, in this town, we have quite a number of veterans group. We have one that it's a ladies' veterans group. They meet on the first Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock at the library, and that's something new that's in. And this is run by a young lady who's still working for the Navy. She's working remotely for the Navy, but she was came in as a sonar tech on a Stennis, and that tells her age. So that's where that is. And she approached us Thursday. She saw we have a sign that goes out the door of the courthouse, so that she saw that and came in and wanted to find out about it and everything. So that's what's right. And I've got Doug here, who's got quite a bunch of qualifications. He was able, on one of our trips to Cuba, he was able to meet up with a chaplain in the Army that he's got a thumb drive. I think the chaplain had all the information he ever had on it, and he'd been in 30 years. And he was going down to work with the Army troops at Joint Task Force. And what a lot of people don't realize, Joint Task Force is a group that oversees the detention center down there. One of the most beautiful areas running off on the coast of Gitmo. I used to shoot 106 rifles off that thing. Now they got it as a prison. I can't get there no more.
You
Well,
said,
Go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Margie.
You said, your group met and no questions asked and no name. Explain why that's important.
The very reason they're important is that a lot of people don't want people to know what they're doing. They may have it, they just don't want to let anybody know that they've got it. And they figure if somebody's got my name down, it's going to go on a report somewhere in D.C. or Frankfurt or whatever. And a lot of people are afraid to let the police departments know, I don't care what, you want to keep it secret, we'll keep it secret. It's just like you go and somebody goes and they need help, and a chaplain or a pastor, we're doing, like as Doug is, he's a pastor, and we try to take care of that deal that way. And it's something that we tried to start some years ago. It worked for a while. And like I said, COVID come in and shut us down. As COVID, as I think our president's trying to do now, was to shut us down, put the mask mandates on. But it's one of those situations, I don't want to know your name. I just want to help. And as being a retired command master chief, that's the job I had. I had 726 guys that I was responsible for, even the officers. But trust me, there's many a times I told the guys, if you want to talk to me, is it door shut or door open? Because when the door shut, they knew we were talking about something nobody else needed to know about.
Right.
And you get the troops like that, and that's probably some of the stuff that I don't think some of the senior officers or senior enlisted in the military is doing right now.
Do you have, what size group do you have? In just approximate terms. Do you have two people show up or 10?
That could be.
We've had two, and we've had close to 10.
Yeah, they come in, it's just, some of them, and of course I had a guy the other day told me, I ain't going. I said, if you don't want to, I'm not going to try to. He's another one of those that's skittish of help. He's in the VA system, and he's just skittish of what's going on. Well, another reason the county judge wanted to do this is the counseling or group roundtable discussions that they would have for PTSD at the VA during COVID fell off. So a lot of those guys got dropped off, and they haven't started again that I know of. And I had one of my good friends want to know if we're going. I said, yeah, we'll do it. I said, I need you to help us guide it through how the VA was trying to do it.
Right.
How do you get the word out to veterans and other people that this counseling is available to them?
Well, we have a guy that's, I get what you meant. We have a guy that's on this team. LC is I forget the guy's last name, but he approached the county judge at the time, and LC's been going out to all the veterans groups and leaving flyers and that. And then, of course, we were able to get into the newspaper. I talked to one of the reporters the other day, and then I saw a blurb in somebody's column with mentioning us. But it's word of mouth.
That's it's word of mouth, and there's no pipeline like a veterans pipeline. They all talk to each other. Again, you learn certain ways. You identify others that have been in the military, and you start up a discussion, and the next thing you know, you're talking military. You're talking what they did, and the stigma attached to this is you got the military and the VA out there doing all kinds of programming and good stuff. The military, while you're in, is giving you lots of different things from the situations I've been involved with. That may not be the case across the board. And the Veterans Administration has a website and just tons of information, both for those going through PTSD and the families of those going through PTS with those individuals. But there's a group that trust the VA to some degree, And there's a large group that doesn't want anything getting back to the VA of what they're doing and how they're going through life or anything else. And they will do everything they can to stay away from attaching themselves to the stigma of PTSD, because it's attaching themselves to the stigma of mental health.
Well, it's amazing that there is that stigma, because, I mean, if you break your leg, there is nothing shameful about seeking treatment for the broken leg. If you're having mental issues, there should be no stigma attached to getting help.
I wholeheartedly agree to you, and I have PTSD. I didn't get mine through the military, I got mine through chaplaincy. And I have very good coping skills, so normally it doesn't even show itself that I have it. But again, if I can speak out, if Frank can speak out about his journey and get to folks, a lot of times then we can, and again, we may not even meet in this meeting where we get together. We may be, somebody get a call. Frank gets more common than I do anymore, because I've kind of stepped back and I've become just an information source and an experienced individual of dealing with PTSD. And Frank's more on the front line with the vets than I am. And they may call him at any hour of the night, or a number of us, we get a call at home saying, I'm having some problems. Well, I can't deal with it right now, but I got a guy who can. And hopefully that's the network that starts to build both through the group and beyond the group. I think the ultimate goal for this process, at least I think from the judge exec's point of view and from our point of view, is that we get a clearinghouse, a space in the government office, but we get space where we can, number one, provide materials, number two, provide sending somebody to somebody who might be able to help them, who has a proven record of helping them. Somebody deals with a certain type of therapy. I have I deal with choice theory. And so most of my modality that I use as a pastor deals with that theory of helping people. Well, it might help some people, it might not. And there's always somebody out there that's doing different things with light desensitizing, and there's just a number of techniques out there that are available to them if they can get past the stigma,
or what they perceive as the stigma.
Perceived stigma, and get to someone. And unfortunately, even in this county, I've buried several vets that didn't have to go. Suicide is the ultimate self-medication or ultimate out, and it's usually accompanied with drugs or alcohol, and there's too many people that get hurt by that type of an event.
Well, Doug, you bring your experience as a pastor and pastoral counseling. Tell us a little bit about what were you drawn to with your own experience with PTSD to try to help others? Is that what, I mean, and of course, as a chaplain working with first responders, they're exposed to trauma at any given moment. That's on a full-time basis as part of their job.
My own work with PTSD started long before I knew I was in the category. And PTS, post-traumatic stress, accompanies a number of events in our society. When it becomes disabling to you is really when it passes over into the PTSD. And so, I don't think mine has become disabling to me, so I think I'm coping fairly well. And I use other people around me to help me make sure that's the case. But so my work with PTSD started well before it entered my world.
Right.
I started working with vets. Well, I was in ROTC in '75 when Vietnam ended, and I got my honorable discharge because Vietnam ended without any active days. And but for some reason, in the different journeys I've had in life, I kept running into veterans and working with veterans who were having difficulties re-entering society, or what we call, a normal day-to-day life working in this country. And during that process, I started to, that plus the suicide rate, I developed a strong desire to assist. Along with my chaplaincy and so forth, it grew. And then in just working with individuals one-on-one as a pastoral care, I started to see that almost every psychiatric issue, or mental health issue that they were having, usually led back to some kind of major trauma in their life. Now, it may not have been a trauma to me, it may not be a trauma to you, but for some reason it became a trauma in their life. And then they either, were embarrassed or ashamed, or whatever reason, it developed and it continued to grow. And so, like I said, it's just not the veterans who have seen more things than their eyes should have seen, but it's also law enforcement who see more things than their eyes should have seen. Fire departments that have seen more things than their eyes should have seen. The events of first responders and veterans are not normal things humans should go through. And when we send a guy off to boot camp to become a soldier, we teach him to be a warrior. And then we take a warrior, and when he's done, he gets put back into society. Well, he's still a warrior. And if he doesn't have good outlets and good coping skills, that will carry over to his actions in everyday life. And we've seen it all around us. We have it here in Nelson County. We have it in just about everywhere I've ever been and everywhere I've ever worked. Frank was telling the story when we arrived down in Jacksonville to go over to Guantanamo Bay. I was sitting there with a brigadier general who had major responsibilities for some of the things going on at Gitmo, and as we talked and interacted, and he was in the chaplain category. We started talking, and I kept hearing a little. It's like I told the young lady the other day at the meeting, Navy-wise, I can pick up on PTSD real quick because I've been around a lot of it. And we just started talking, and all of a sudden we're talking about his journey and his holdover events. And we ended up doing about a half-hour, 45-minute debriefing right there in the airport waiting on the craft to go to Cuba. So.
In my own experience, many years ago, actually late 70s, I was in a technical school program for electronics, and there were a lot of guys there on the GI Bill. And I can tell you there were a couple of guys that were there who were having a tremendous problems readjusting. They had been in Vietnam, and one guy had been, and I'm not sure what level he was at, but he was responsible for helicopters, and he's like, he was responsible for men and millions of dollars worth of equipment and keeping it running. And now he's back here, and he had value and position there, and felt like he was something. And now he was back at this vocational school, and he felt like he was, and of course, in the late 70s, nobody got a parade coming back, or even any appreciation.
Right.
And he resented that, he was a nobody, or that's the way he felt.
Well, I know that situation. I was before I became the command master chief, I was in a battalion started out as the company chief, and we lost our company commander because at that time we were short officers. So I was acting company commander, and I had to use that phrase to a few people. I was in the largest construction company in the world that never made a dime and went to file Chapter 13. And the guy says, what? I said, I ran a 270-man horizontal construction company in the Navy, in the Seabees. I says, you got that, you make budgets, you make everything else, and you come out and you go looking for a job, and I go to a guy, and he says, I can't hire you. He says, you got more experience than I ever want to get. So I said, and that's part of the problem. They come out with all this knowledge and stuff, and nobody wants to hire them.
Right.
But, it's a situation and it's one thing not nice about all of these units now that try to get together. I know the 101st has been doing some good stuff. All the Seabees, we have battalions that doing. I went 2 weeks ago. I drove up to Doug's hometown in Columbus, Ohio for 3 or 4 hours to meet some of my old troops. And it's just the feelings with the guys, especially the guys that I had that I thought were, in the original, I thought weren't going to make anything out of themselves. And now they're all leaders and doing stuff. And it's just a matter, especially in when you're in management and stuff, to see these guys still progressing, and they still want to. Well, I need some help. I said, okay, but that's what the program is about. I know that a lot of people don't understand, but I understand when Tim and I talked, and he kept pushing me on this that we need to get this going. So he says, if right now to get it started, if we have to, we'll meet up in the fiscal courtroom. Well, we meet at in a courthouse down on the first floor in the conference room, and have to go in the side door. So we'll have the sign out. I'm going to leave a bunch of cards here outside in the vestibule for people to stop by if they want information. But it's one of those deals. We try to make it available for everybody. We've got 2 or 3 other people that come in to see what's going on and what the heck's, everything else.
And this is twice a week?
Well, it's twice a month.
Twice a month.
Right.
Okay, on
Thursday, the second and fourth Thursday. Trying to get enough room in the house. Actually, I didn't realize the courthouse was as busy during the nighttime as it is, because it's and at night there's only one key that works the side door. The keys that work the side door don't want to work the front door, he says.
Well, you were talking about being a CB.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I had twin uncles who were CBs in the Second World War. And I think it's pretty fascinating, the things that the Seabees had to do. I mean, construct bridges, whatever else. I mean, they had to throw up, be ready to throw up. Is that correct? I mean, I all I heard was, some things they talked about.
Well, let's put it this way. Our motto is, if you want it done, give us about an hour and a half, we'll have it done. I mean, they've come at us, I need this, this, and this. And I said, I will work on it. Yeah, so Seabees in World War II were thought of Admiral Ben Morrell. The I had been around in World War I, but they never got out of Great Lakes. But the problem was what we had called the Black Cat Battalion, which is NCB1, was originally a bunch of civilians that was hired to do jobs. And, of course, when the war started, civilians can't carry arms in combat, or they're subject. So he came up with Seabees, and they go through, basically they were recruiting trades that were already, guys who were already trained, send them through military boot camp, send them boot camp, military training, and put them out to sea. One of the friends of mine that's died is buried in Arlington now, is Ice Pick, and he was a member of the Naval Construction Battalion 133 who landed on Iwo Jima in the first wave. We don't normally land in the first wave, but we have done it. The reason be there, the admiral or the general, the Marine Corps, wanted 2 battalions to go in, and his 2nd battalion was sitting on a ship with amoebic dysentery. And he says, well, who else have I got? And he looks at his chart, and he says, Seabees, they're military trained. So A little known fact is that the flagpole that was raised when they raised the flag on Iwo Jima, NCB 133 furnished them the pipe. They went down there to get a pipe for the flagpole, and that's where that came from. But there was a lot of stuff that we built when they took over Guadalcanal. They took over that airport and airfield and built it till it was back in operation. We had a situation in Vietnam that one of the units was building a runway, and they weren't quite through with it. And we had one of the Phantoms coming back from a raid in North Vietnam, and he couldn't make it. He was not going to be able to make it to the ship. And he asked, come down and he says, are you guys open? He said, no, we're not. We're open. He says, so we asked him, he says, how long can you stay aloft? I think I can stay about a half hour. He said, well, we'll see what we can do. We won't let you down. 15 minutes later, they called back and says, bring her in. We're ready for you. We weren't quite done with it, but we're ready enough for him to get him in.
So you cleared the ground.
Well, we were actually building the runway, putting the stats mat on the runway, and got enough down for him to come in. He could not enough to take off, but he didn't need to be taken off. He needed to get on the ground and get on the ground safely.
I just know my uncles were very proud to be in that group.
Actually, believe it or not, there's a heck of a number of us here in town that are CBs. I run into them all the time. And then I've got one, I would shoot practical pistol on the side, which is where my release from it is. And I come across here one of the guys that is shooting with us now is a retired Navy captain, lives in town. He was the captain of a couple of ships, and he retired. He was the base commander for Naval Base Newport, Rhode Island, when he retired. I told him the other day, last Wednesday, I said, now, Captain, I said, I need you in that dress white uniform for the memorial service. He says, I can't fit into it. And his wife looked at me, how I got it? I said, to the end of May. He said, I'll get him in it.
Well, I imagine that you, with different veterans groups here, that gives you an outlet for being able to let people know about this program.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're going through. Like I said, one of the things the paper was very, and I made the girl at the 5-star promise to tell me that I only bought one newspaper. So I went in on Tuesday morning and talked to her. She said, well, I'll get it in the paper tomorrow. I said, okay. So I'm expecting a little blurb. We were there for a half hour. I'm expecting a little blurb. Went to buy there, and that's also the same following the weekend. They put the sign up for the bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, they'll get top billing on this and everything, and I can buy the paper, and I get the top slit on the front. Yeah, there's. Yeah. And then there was another article on the back of it, and we talked for a half hour, and there's a lot of stuff she didn't put in there.
Yeah.
There's so much involved in this work, and one of the things being a clearinghouse to send these guys out to is, when we were talking earlier, it's like playing Zynga. Every single case of this, every single individual who's got PTSD, because it covers a lot of ground, is like playing Zynga. You pull out one little block and you deal with all those symptoms, and when we're coping with all that, you go back and you get another, and you get another, and then hopefully it crumbles. You want it to crumble. But there are so many programs now, versus when we started this, about 10 years ago probably. There's so many programs now that it's getting vets with vets. It's getting trauma victim with people that have trauma like theirs. That's where they feel comfortable. That's where they can talk. And there's groups in some parts of this country that are getting together to build rehab helicopters for NAM, or rehab them from desert or whatever. Rehab vehicles, motorcycles.
Using skills that they acquired.
Use the skills to get together, rebuild something, redo something, and at the same time they're sitting there debriefing each other, talking about this happened or that happened. And like I say, there are so many different types of therapy out there that one therapy might fit that particular individual and that particular symptom, won't do anything for another one. But at the same time, they're the individual who has it, they're the only ones that can build the coping skills to deal with it. And one thing that I have found, and yes, I'm a preacher, so I'm a little biased here, a good faith life and a good faith background before they got into whatever they got into has shown real positives in how in their recovery or they're dealing with. I don't think you ever get over PTSD, because you can be walking down the street and you can sense a smell, and all of a sudden you're there. You're back where you were. And if you've got good coping stuff, you can most of the time deal with it. Not every time. There are different things like fireworks that trigger veterans, but again, it goes across the board. It's all first responders, I think, fall into the category of needing to make sure they got the coping skills to deal with what they're doing. Chaplains across the board. We see some of our eyes have been where they shouldn't be, and we see things. Preachers, I think, could have a strong possibility of needing to make sure they've got their stuff together. How would a veteran or the family of a veteran recognize PTSD? I mean, how is this just a conclusion they come to after having episodes of problems? I mean, how would they identify? How would they know to say, I suffer from, or he or she suffers from PTSD? They're sitting in their living room doing something with their family, and they hear something that sounded like something that was at the point of their trauma back when. And all of a sudden they go from happy, wonderful guy to on alert. Those are subtle things that happen. But there's very few that don't have occasionally nightmares, night dreams. And that's where a lot of it pops up. But when you see a sudden attitude change in somebody, usually, and they could be just a father who's been raising his kids, never had military experience, never been in danger that you know of, and he can catch something on TV that was traumatic to him that he thought he had coped out, and all of a sudden he's there. And reacting. And it's so many of our less than good reactions to things around us come from triggers associated with something in our life that we've determined was trauma to us. And so they may lose their temper or react inappropriately to something.
One of the situations I had, and I didn't know I had it at the time, my mom and dad had moved out off of Woodridge Ferry Road, which backed up to Fort Knox. So we're building a new house, and I'm putting the deal under the roof edge and sitting there. I'm up on this 12-foot ladder, and all of a sudden I hear machine guns go off. Well, the next thing I know, people are looking under the bus that they were staying in looking for me, because first instinct, I hear a machine gun, I got to get out of there. So I went to cover. So what's wrong with you? I said, well, it's one of them incidents. You hear machine gun fire until you can figure out where it's coming from. You want to get out of there. I had another incident, a friend of mine who had a nightmare, and when his significant other woke him up, it wasn't a nightmare. He was having a nightmare, but she was in part of it, and she says, you got to get help, and it's a situation like that. But and again, they'll self-medicate as a way to. When people are when people are getting more alcohol or drugs or whatever, that may be a clear indicator to something back that they need to find a way to deal with.
in my own coping skills, one thing I can do is I go around the county, and there's probably not a major road in this county that I haven't been out with a body attached to it.
Right.
And or this suicide or that suicide will flip through my head, and it's bigger than me, and I know my triggers for the most part, and I at that time just basically go into prayer and say, it's yours, I can't handle this, and hopefully I don't change my behaviors in the room. I don't have dreams about it. Most of my dreams are good dreams. Mm-hmm. And so
I had a friend of mine who was a undertaker, who was actually at one time head of all the Dignity Funeral Homes in the city of Louisville. And I figured out he was a dead running alcoholic. He smoked like a freight train, he drank like a fish. And then I got to looking, and damn, almost every undertaker I met was an alcoholic. And got to thinking, that's how they're, they put a big front on. Mm-hmm. But this is how they're coping with facing death constantly. It's not like the chaplain would be. He's got one every now and then, but these guys are dealing with it 2 or 3 times a day. And that's what I told the guys down in Barlow when they hired that young lady. I said, be careful of yourself. I said, I don't want you all turning into alcoholics. And that's one of the things that you got to keep. A lot of people don't think that they've got to have somebody looking out for them.
Right. All right, well, we need to take a commercial break, guys. You're listening to Bradford and Brooks and our very special guest, Frank Thompson, and Pastor Doug
Alexander,
I'm sorry. My mind went blank, which seems to happen more frequently the older I get. All right, and of course, Margie Bradford back with us. We'll be back in just a few moments, so please stay tuned. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you. And, of course, Margie, it's great to have you back home.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Looking at a beautiful Wednesday morning outside. We'll be with you till the top of the hour. Margie and I and our special guest, Frank Thompson and Doug Alexander. And we've been talking about about PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And Frank, both of you have been working in this to kind of create I don't want to say a support group, but a place where people can come, share experience, and you've become like a resource center for people who are may have PTSD, or they know they have it, and they're looking for help, or just somebody who knows what they're going through.
Somebody wants to talk to somebody about something or whatever, and then we can get them in the right direction.
Right.
Which is about what the VA was doing when they had the in sessions. Of course, now the VA is spread out between the hospital, Stony Brook, the one out on Dixie Highway, the one in Newburgh. Mm-hmm. So they got everything out in it. I've got one guy he has been this past month been to every one of them for different things. So it's but the thing of it is, we were talking about the PTSD and people that are having the problems. One problem was one person I tried to keep an eye on, which is a friend of mine in this county, is our new coroner. Mm-hmm. Even though she's always trained, but I try to keep an eye on her, keep in touch with her, and gauge how she's doing and everything else. Because I've known her now for a long time. Fact is, when she was working as loss control at Walmart, I retired. She offered me a full-time job doing night walking at the Walmart when it was open 24 hours a day. I said, well, I can't go on vacations all the time if I have to do that. But we've been friends, but I like to, I was the one that convinced her to go ahead and run this time. She pretty much didn't want to do it, and I said, now it's your turn, girl. We got it set up for you. And I think she's doing a great job at it. But it's just, she sees the first of them. But like I said, and one of the things is, there's different groups here in town of veterans. There's 2 groups of veterans that meet at Pat's Restaurant every morning for coffee. There's some that go to Dairy Queen. There used to be a group that went to Hardee's, but they wound up moving to Pat's when Hardee's closed in the COVID deal. Sometimes there's groups that at Wendy's, but they congregate and just coffee, maybe breakfast, and just talk. And that's one of their coping methods. So we're just giving them another opportunity to have a place that they can stop and have a talk and do something. And just, if they just want to come and say hi or bye or whatever. Like I said, last Thursday night, we had this young lady come in, and she says, I saw your sign, and I'm in dealing with this and this and this, and we're in this ladies group. And I says, okay. And so I guess we talked for an hour and a half or something like that, and to get things going. And then, of course, I read their article in this paper Sunday, and they had that article that mentioned our group in the bottom paragraph. So I'm going to go over and visit with them next Thursday. Next Thursday when they have their meeting, and say hi, bye. If you need any help, let me know. So. But yeah, we're here for the veterans. Like I said, I'm going to leave a stack of cards here out in the lobby. And if anybody wants to come by, I know a lot of people want to come by, but they don't want anybody, excuse me, to know that they're getting a card. But they'll be here. There's a few places around town. There's some at Pat's, and there's a few places I've handed to people. I've got another 150 to go.
Then you'll have to reorder more.
We
We hope.
Because, whatever percentage of those going through military PTSD, and again, a lot of our military go into law enforcement work. There's a percentage of them, and when you start talking about 20 die a day by suicide, fortunately, we've gotten a few people to find themselves, their coping skills and necessary. Their families are happier, they're happier, but we've also lost a couple in this county, and that's an understatement.
And you also mentioned earlier when we were talking about the fact that there are people in civilian situations who've survived a car crash or some other traumatic event, like a public shooting, or that
Lost
would,
a child.
That, that would need some. Could benefit from.
Yeah, they can benefit from them. They're welcome. Like I said, it's not that when I talked to the county judge, talked to Tim, it was not so much. He says that let's make it PTSD. I said, do you want to include everybody? And it basically said, yeah. I said, well, that's fine with me, because if we can keep one person, civilian or military, from biting the bullet, which is what we call it, then we've accomplished that task. And I don't like going to funerals, so please, guys, don't be doing that to me.
And I sure don't like doing them.
And again, for family members who may wonder if their loved one or a relative has PTSD, what are some of the signs to look for?
Change of behavior on a dime. There's again, sitting around doing normal stuff, and they get one of the most terrible ones that I dislike is burnt smell. And anybody that's ever been to a scene of a fire where somebody has been deceased knows what smell I'm talking about. But just that smell can kick them into a reaction. They hear something that is accompanying or like what they heard when they were having whatever trauma they were having. Night dreams, of course, and nightmares are a dead giveaway. But that's the obvious. People who all of a sudden go from the moment they're in till a moment past, and the best example I can think of that is all of a sudden they start fidgeting because they're expecting something else to go off. But that's, again, just through the experiences. We have our fair share of PTSD calls to the local law enforcement. And I've been in situations where we've had to talk the weapon out of their hand, and probably wasn't some of my smarter moves, but I put myself in that situation, and thank God they all worked out. But there are negotiators out there for those kind of things, and use them. And as I say with everything we're talking about this morning, we can assist people in finding the help they want if they want it, and will go take advantage of it. Unfortunately, to date, a large percentage don't want to talk about it. Especially in a time when we're talking about red flag laws and things like that. Do you know what it is to admit a mental illness under those circumstances? And again, you've given this person a weapon, you've sent him to war, he's done what he was trained to do, and he comes back, and now you're going to take away his weapon because he's possibly got some mental health issues he's trying to work through? It doesn't do well for those individuals who are warriors, and they are a different part of society.
Right.
Warriors don't react well to people trying to take over the freedoms they fought for.
Right. Well, Frank, tell us again the dates and times when the PTSD group meets.
All right, we meet on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. in the old courthouse in the side entrance.
All right, and you're in the conference room right there?
In the conference room,
And
right inside the door.
Right inside the door. It's the first door on the right.
Right.
Right, okay. And the first, or 2nd and 4th Tuesday?
2nd and 4th Tuesday.
Thursday, I'm sorry.
2nd,
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
7 o'clock, and that conference room's on the first floor. You have to go in from the side entrance that faces West Stephen Foster. And that door will be open, and it's got a handicap ramp there too if you need that. And the conference room is to the right, just right inside the door. You can't miss it. And Frank, when they're having the meetings, you'll have signs out in the...
Put a sign outside the door so people can see it.
Okay.
It's a very telling sign. It's some of the pictures that I've captured about PTSD, but this is the best when the guy's sinking in a pool of sharks, thinking he's all right, and the sharks are PTSD. So it's one of the most... If you think you can do it by yourself, you can't. So that's what we're here for.
All righty. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Bradford and Brooks. Frank and Doug, thank you all for coming in.
You're welcome.
And sharing with us information, and we'll try to keep getting the word out about your all's twice a month meetings at the courthouse.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Margie, that's going to do it. It's time to wrap up this week.
Sure
and we'll
is.
be back next Wednesday with another Bradford and Brooks. Until then, everybody have a great week and get out and enjoy the sunshine.